February 11th, 1926, Volume 18. The human will is the woodworm that gnaws at all goods, and the key that opens all evils. Each act of human will not connected with that of God forms an abyss of distance between creator and creature. I was thinking to myself, why so much fear in me, to the point of feeling my life missing in me? That, may this never be, I might not do the most holy will of God entirely and completely. The mere thought of this destroys me. What would it be, then, if I came to the point of withdrawing, even for one single instant, from the supreme and adorable will of my Creator? Now, while I was thinking of this, my lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, and taking my hands in his, he kissed them with unspeakable love. Then he pressed them so very tightly to his breast, and all tenderness told me, "My daughter, how beautiful is my will operating in your hands! Your motions are wounds for me, but divine wounds, because they come from the depth of my will, dominating, operating, and triumphant in you. So I feel wounded as though by another me. With just reason do you fear. If you went out of my supreme will even for one instant, oh, how low you would descend. You would reduce yourself as though from the state of Adam innocent to the state of Adam guilty. And since Adam had been created as the head of all generations, his will, withdrawn from his Creator, formed the woodworm in the root of the tree of all generations. Therefore all feel the ruins which the woodworm of the human will formed from the very beginning of the creation of man. Each act of human will not connected with that of God forms an abyss of distance between Creator and creature, and therefore distance of sanctity, of beauty, of nobility, of light, of science, and so forth. So by withdrawing from the divine will, Adam did nothing but put himself at a distance from his Creator. This distance debilitated him, impoverished him, unbalanced him completely, and caused imbalance in all generations, because when evil is in the root, the whole tree is forced to feel the malignant effects, the bad humors, which are in the root. Therefore, my daughter, since I have called you as the first, and as the head of the mission of my will, this will of mine must lay in you the balance between you and the Creator, and therefore remove the distance which exists between the human will and the divine, so as to be able to form in you the root of the tree without bad humors, making only the vital humor of my will flow, so that the tree may not be jeopardized in its vegetation, in the development, and in the preciousness of its fruits. Now, if you wanted to do an act of your will not connected with mine, you would come to form the woodworm to the mission which I have entrusted to you, and like a second Adam you would ruin the root of the tree of my will, which I want to form in you, and would jeopardize all those who will want to graft themselves to this tree, because they would not find all the fullness of my will in the one in whom it had its beginning. Therefore it is I who cast this fear into your soul, so that my will may always be dominant in you, and all the manifestations which I have made to you may always be in vegetation, in order to form the divine root, trunk, branches, flowers, and fruits, without the shadow of your human will. In this way you would return to your origin, into the womb of your Creator, all beautiful, grown and formed with the fullness of the supreme will. And the divinity, satisfied in you of the work of the creation of man, would make its chosen people of the Fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven come out from you and from the mission entrusted to you. Therefore be attentive, my daughter, and do not want to ruin the work of my will in you. I love it so much, and it costs me so much, that I will use all my infinite jealousies. I myself will guard my will, so that yours may never have life." I remained surprised, and I comprehended with such clarity what an act of human will means compared to an act of divine will, and how the soul, by doing her own will, loses the physiognomy of her Creator, and stripping herself of the beauty with which she was created, she clothes herself with miserable rags. She barely drags herself in good. She acquires the diabolical likeness. She feeds herself with dirty foods. My Jesus, give us all the grace never to do our own will, which is like calling all passions back to life. So, almost trembling, I tried to plunge more deeply into the supreme will, and I called my celestial Mamma to my help, so that together, in the name of all, we might adore the supreme will on behalf of all the human wills opposed to it. Now, while I was doing this, the heavens opened, and my Jesus came out from within my interior, all in feast, and told me, "Daughter of my volition, you must know that when my will reigns in the soul, it integrates everything she does, and the development of the life of my eternal will in her. So it was not you who called my divine Mamma, but it was my will that called her. And she, feeling called by a divine will which has always been whole and triumphant within her, immediately perceived that one from the celestial family was calling her upon earth. And she said to all of heaven, 'Let us go, let us go. It is one from our family that is calling us to fulfill the duties of the family to which we belong.' And here they are. Look at them, all around us. The Virgin, the saints, the angels, to do the act of adoration which you want to do, and the divinity to receive it. My will has such power as to enclose everything and make every one do the same thing, as if it were one single act. Hence the great difference that passes between one who lets my will reign within herself and one who lives of her own self. In the first one there is a divine will that prays, that operates, that thinks, that looks, that suffers. At each motion of hers it moves heaven and earth and connects everything together in such a way that all feel the power of the divine will operating in the creature and recognize in her the nobility, the likeness, the offspring of their Creator. And as daughter of the celestial family, all protect her, assist her, defend her, and long to have her together with them in the celestial fatherland. All the opposite for one who lives of her own will, which is the key of hell, of miseries, of inconstancy. Whatever place it opens, it can open only there where evil is. And if she does any good at all, it is apparent, because inside of it there is the woodworm of her will, which gnaws at everything. Therefore, even if it should cost you your life, never, never go out of my will. February 11th, 1927, Volume 20. Where the divine will reigns, Jesus places the strings of his attributes in order. How he must be able to say, "Here is my heaven." How the children of the Fiat will be kings and queens, and only one who possesses the divine Fiat has the right to ask for its kingdom. As I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus made me see many strings in my interior, one close to the other, starting from a sphere, which was in the middle of these strings. Under this sphere there was empty space, and in that empty space there was my sweet Jesus, who very often touched those strings and played, but in such a harmonious and beautiful way that it cannot be described. Then after he played his little sonata, he said, "My daughter, these strings are the symbol of the soul in whom my will reigns. I myself delight in forming them and arranging them all in order. Look at how beautiful they are. Each string has its distinct color, invested with light, in such a way that altogether they form the most beautiful rainbow, all dazzling with light. But do you want to know why each string has its distinct color? Because each one of them symbolizes one of my divine qualities, that is, my attributes. So I placed everything in order: the string of love, the string of goodness, the string of power, of mercy, of strength, of wisdom, of purity, in sum, everything. I have not excluded even the string of justice. So when I want to love and be loved, I touch the string of love. Oh, how sweet is its sound, soft, penetrating, delightful, such as to shake heaven and earth, investing the most intimate fibers of all the beings in whom my will reigns. And I love and am loved, because its sound draws and enraptures everyone to love me, and I myself, enraptured by my own love, love and release oceans of love. This sound is so melodious as to make me tolerate everything and bear the great evils of the poor world. This sound makes me pass to touch the string of goodness, and this sound draws the attention of all to receive the good that my goodness wants to release and give to creatures. Speaking voices can be heard in this sound. It makes all sounds stand at attention, sounds of surprise, of admiration, in hearing in this sound of voices the goods which I want to give. This sound, while making me release my goods, disposes the creatures to receive them. Therefore, each time I want one of my attributes to exercise its office, I touch the string that belongs to it, and I place it in attitude. But do you know why I have arranged all these strings in you? Because, wherever my will reigns, I want to find all of myself and all the things that belong to me, in such a way that whatever I do in heaven, I must be able to do in the soul in whom my supreme Fiat dominates and reigns. I must have my throne, my melodies, to be able to vibrate the sound of mercy to convert souls, the sound of wisdom to make myself known, the sound of my power and justice to make myself feared. I must be able to say, "Here is my heaven." After this I was doing my round in the creation, and while impressing my "I love you" on each created thing, I asked that by virtue of that divine will that preserves them beautiful and whole, the kingdom of the supreme Fiat would come upon earth. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, created things are inanimate, therefore they do not have the virtue of asking for a kingdom so holy. But while I was thinking of this, my beloved Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, it is true that created things are without soul. However, within each one of them flows the life of my will, and only by virtue of it they maintain themselves beautiful, just as they were created. Now created things are all noble and queens, all belonging to my royal family. And by virtue of my will which animates them, and of the acts which my will exercises in them, they have the right to ask for the coming of my kingdom, because it is also their kingdom. In order to ask, with right, for the coming of the kingdom of the divine Fiat, it is necessary to be one from our family, in whom our will has its prime place, its throne, its life. This is why I first made you be born in it, so that I might have its rights of paternity over you, and you might have the rights of daughter, in order to have the rights to ask for its kingdom, to ask not yourself alone, but also by virtue of all created things, that is, of all those innumerable acts which our will exercises in all creation, that our kingdom and yours may come. My daughter, who can aspire to have the right to be king, if not a son of the king. Even more, everyone sees in him the right that the kingdom will be his. But if they see a servant, a peasant aspiring to it, who does not belong to the royal family, and who says that he has the right to be king and that the kingdom will be his, they consider him insane and worthy of all mockeries. In the same way, one in the condition of servant would not have the right to ask for my kingdom, and if he asks for it, it is without right and just a way of saying. Now suppose that a king had hundreds, thousands of children, all belonging legitimately to his royal family. Would all of them not have the right to occupy noble positions, not unseemly to their status, and to say, "The kingdom of our father is ours, because we carry his royal blood in our veins"? Now, in all creation, in the children who will belong to the kingdom of the divine Fiat, will flow the life of it, more than blood, which will give them the right to belong to the royal and celestial family, in such a way that all will be kings and queens. All will occupy noble positions, worthy of the family to which they belong. Therefore, created things have more right that the kingdom of my will come, because they are all daughters of heaven, and are the acts of my very will which asks for it in them, than the creatures themselves, who, by doing their will, have reduced themselves to the condition of servants. So when you ask for the coming of the kingdom of my eternal Fiat in the name of the heavens, of the sun, of the sea, and of all the other created things, you force my will itself to ask for the coming of its kingdom. And do you think it is nothing that a divine will prays in each created thing as you impetrate its kingdom? Therefore continue and never draw back. Even more, you must know that it is my will itself that puts you on the way in the whole creation, to have its daughter together with it in all of its acts, to make you do what it does and wants from you. February 11th, 1930, Volume 27, How Man Was Created to Live in Intimacy with God and in His House, and as he withdrew from his will, by God's goodness, he was given the legal share. My poor mind undergoes the sweet enchantment of the refulgent sun of the eternal Fiat, and oh, how many beautiful, touching scenes it unfolds within me, such that if I were able to tell them as I see them, all would undergo the sweet enchantment, and in chorus all would say, "We want to do the divine will." But alas, I am always the little ignorant one, and only stammering can I say something. But in comprehending the great good of this divine volition, and how we swim in its gigantic waves of light, of unspeakable beauty, of unreachable sanctity, I was thinking to myself, how is it possible for such a great good not to be known? And while we swim inside of it, we ignore the great good that surrounds us, that invests us inside and out, that gives us life, and only because we ignore it, we do not enjoy the admirable effects of all the great goods that a will so holy contains. Oh, please reveal yourself, O omnipotent Fiat, and the face of the earth will change. And besides, why did our blessed Lord not please to manifest from the beginning of creation the many admirable things that this most holy will wants to do and to give to creatures? And while my mind was wandering, as though enraptured in the sweet enchantment of the divine volition, my love, my life, Jesus, the celestial teacher, who charms with his lovely speaking on his own will, making himself seen, told me, "My little daughter of my will, the creature cannot live, either soul or body, without my divine will. and since it is her first act of life, she finds herself in the condition either of receiving its act of continuous life from it, or of not being able to have existence. And since man was created for him to live in the opulence of the goods of this divine will, his beloved inheritance, he was therefore created for him to live of us and in our house, like a son who lives with his father. Otherwise, how could he be our amusement, our joy and happiness, if he were not to live close to us, together with us in our divine will? A son who is far away cannot form the joy of his father, his smile, his amusement, his intimate conversation. From afar they cannot play together or smile with happiness. On the contrary, the mere distance breaks the love and brings the bitterness of not being able to enjoy the beloved. See, then, man was created to live in intimacy with us, in our house, in our own will, for us to secure our joys and perennial happiness as well as his. But man, our son, though he was happy in the house of his father, rebelled and went out of his paternal house, and by doing his will he lost the smile of his father, his pure joys. And since he could not live without the concourse of our divine will, we acted as father and gave him the legal share of our divine will, no longer as life that carried him on its lap to render him happy and holy, but as concurring to preserve him alive, not to make him happy as before, but to give him the things of strict necessity and according to how he would behave. Without my divine will there cannot be life, and this is why so little is known about my divine fiat, because it is its mere legal share that creatures know, and many times this legal share is not even recognized completely, because one who lives of the legal share does not live in the house of his father. He is far away from him, and many times he finds himself in the condition of spoiling, with unworthy acts, the very legal share he received. Therefore do not be surprised if little is known about my divine will, if one does not live in it, if one is not in continuous contact to receive its life that makes one happy, that sanctifies, and, one being close to it, opens its secrets and makes itself known, who it is, what it can give to the creature, and how it yearns to keep her on its lap to form in her its divine life. More so since, by doing his will, man placed himself in the condition of a servant, not of an heir, and a servant has no right to the inheritance of his master, but to the miserable compensation for him to live life with hardship. Therefore, my daughter, it can be said that with you I have opened the doors to let you enter to live in our house, in our divine will. And keeping you with us, we have manifested to you so much about our divine volition, not as the legal share, but as our fortunate heiress. After this he added, my daughter, more so, since in that little that was written of my divine will in the whole history of the world, having known only the legal share, they have written of it what they have known of my fiat after sin, what relationships it has with creatures, even though they offended and do not live in our house. But as for the relations that passed between my fiat and Adam innocent before sinning, they have written nothing. And how could they write if no one has lived in my divine will as in one's own house? How could they know its secrets and the great prodigy that the operating life of a divine will can do in the creature? Therefore they could and can say of my divine fiat that it disposes everything, that it commands, that it concurs. But as for saying of my divine will how it operates within itself, in its house, the power of its immensity that in one instant does everything, envelops everything, in the creature as it does within itself, this is science that the creature has ignored until now. It could not be written, if not by manifestation of my divine fiat, and to one whom it called to live in our house as our daughter, close to us, inside my will, not far away, such that being able to amuse ourselves with her, we would make her aware of our most intimate secrets. And if we had wanted to manifest what regards our will in relationship with the creature, and she were not living in it, she would not have understood us. It would have been for her like a foreign and unintelligible dialect. End of February 11th. Fiat.